I got a few questions about last week's video, the one where the drawing machine is handwriting all of these notes that are all identical. And much like a magic trick, it's less interesting when you find out, but regardless, here is the short answer. I wrote the note on my remarkable eink tablet, and then I exported it as an SVG and then sent that to the AxiDraw, and then just got it to repeatedly write these over and over. And that's it. Disappointing, I know, but here is the slightly longer version. First, this is the thing that trips people up a lot. If you're looking to have a pen plotter write for you, what you're looking for is a single stroke font. And they're not really the easiest thing to find, especially in the format of an SVG that we need. So in things like Adobe Illustrator and Inkscape, when you export a font as an SVG, you'd think it would just do these nice lines like the letter T. But what it actually does is it turns everything into an outline when you basically draw around each letter twice. And when that plots, it looks really weird because everything's slightly thicker and you've got these start and end positions. In Inkscape, you can use a thing called Hershey Text Extension, and that converts text to one of the built-in single-line fonts. And there's also a company called Quantum Enterprise, which specializes in handwriting style fonts, and you can even create one from your own handwriting. You send it in, you fill in, you write in loads of stuff, and they convert it into a font. And I'm going to make a video about that in the future, and I'll add a whole bunch of links below for more information about single-stroke fonts. Now, onto the video from last week, and if you've received a handwritten note from me, it was actually written by me. I love writing notes and letters and sending them out. Often I send a few weekly, and while I could get the machine to do it, to draw it all for me, the important part to me about writing a letter is sitting and focusing and thinking. So when you spend all day in front of a screen, I find it can sometimes block creativity, while the change of context and brain function of just sitting and writing can give it space for ideas to roll around sort of in the back of the brain. And I find that useful because sometimes it unlocks or solves things I've been puzzling around. And because I wanted to handwrite letters, and because my handwriting was and still is a bit terrible, I picked up these books to learn Spencerian penmanship, and they have a whole bunch of exercises inside where you just go over and over. Here we go. So it slowly builds up into words until you end up sort of doing full sentences. So that's those. And working with those involves using things like a dip pen. So here's one here, and these lovely inks. And the great thing about this is you can use all these metallic inks that have like shinies in them, which is why I love doing it. But you can't use one of these pens in the pen plotter because, or rather I can't, other people might be able to get them to work, because you need to keep dipping them into the ink, and then they need to move back to where you started and move up and down without dropping all the ink onto the paper. And finally, I mean, it's pointy as this writing here is kind of fancy, but I also wanted slightly quicker but still fanciest writing that I could write with a fountain pen like this one here. So I taught myself to write in the style of the Adorn Garland font by printing out sheets I could trace over and then going over and over. And now my handwriting falls somewhere between the Spencerian, the Adorn, and my original messy handwriting, so it's kind of got my own unique style. So to make the notes that I used for last week, in the type font that I wanted, I loaded it into InDesign, wrote out what I wanted, set the font, exported that as a PDF, which I then uploaded into the Remarkable tablet, and then I picked a fine liner pen from here. There's these different pen types, and then I traced over what I wanted. There's a number of different pens here, but the fine liner is a single stroke. It exports what you actually write. Things like the paintbrush or the highlighter or the calligraphy pen actually gives you shapes that have a fill and an outline, and you don't want that whole outline thing again. So I find the fine liner works the best. And if you're going to use your pen plotter with a pen that works best with downward strokes, this copies the direction of the strokes that you write in. So as long as you always write downwards, then the pen will copy it. What's really good is it'll not only copy your writing, but it'll also copy any doodles or drawings that you've done. So that's another kind of fun thing that you can do with the pen plotter. Once you've done that, you export it as an SVG. You drag it into Inkscape to make sure it's the right size of the paper that you want. And then you export it as an SVG again, send it over to the pen plotter, and then off it goes. And that is how I currently automate the writing of notes. If I had the time and inclination, I'd make 26 sheets of letter pairs. So one for A, so A, B, AC, AD in a grid, and then again for uppercase and punctuation. And I'd trace over them all, and then I'd export them as SVGs. And then whenever I sort of typed a note, and if I wrote hello, it will then find that HE and then EL and then LL and then put them all together, and then that would automate the process and export my note for me. And then I guess if you stuck ChatGPT in front of it, or generative poetry or something else like that, you would have yourself a fun little project. One which I don't have time for at the moment, but it would be awesome if I did. Anyway, there you go. That's the behind the scenes of how this worked. Like I said, less fun when you know how it's done. In answer to other questions, yes, I love the Remarkable tablet. I use it every day. There are problems with it. You can't flip through the pages as easily as you can with a notebook. When I'm working with notebooks, I often have my fingers in several points and I'm flipping back and forth as I move things around, which you can't do here. Second, the build quality of the pens is a little bit problematic. This tip here sometimes breaks, and that causes trouble. So I've had no problem with Remarkable supplying me with replacement pens. Anyway, I use it constantly. It's my most favorite productivity tool by far. Out of everything I have, this is the one that's always on my desk. I may make a video about it at some point, but that's not this video. And I think we're done. Like I said, a bunch of links are down below, and if you have any questions, drop them into the comments. I'll do my best to answer them. That wraps it, and I will see you in the next one. Peace. All right.